Afternoon again for some of you. Angel, you ready? Well, there's Sarah. Sarah Einstein.
Jamie, has a copy of the attendance policy been circulated, or do we need to have it up and share it?
That would, well, I think there's one from Brett, I believe. Thank you, Brett. If you've got it to share,
So both there's actually two draft syllabi policy floating around, attendance policies. They're both linked to on the Faculty Senate website. If you go to agenda, you'll see all the different items for today. And when we get to each one, I will share it on the screen because I control the screen right now. But yes, the two syllabi, the two draft syllabi attendance policies, the draft syllabus safety policy, those three items are on our Faculty Senate agenda page.
Yep. I've got them pulled up, but Charlene, if you've got it where you can share it, then even better. A little out of order than what's on the agenda, but we'll roll with it. Let's see, Steve, Ray, Angel, Sarah, Jack. Chris, Dr. Angle is going to say a few words, so as soon as he's finished, you're up first.
No worry, I just have to be on that other call at 4.
He said he has one at 4, so that'll work just
That's the same one, so.
splendidly. I hope it's a good meeting for you.
We'll see.
Informative, at least.
It will be that for sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to take roll of senators that are here. Susan, Lynette. Charlene, are you recording this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Susan Thule said we could take roll from the recording also. Technology has really opened up for me. I just came from a multimedia meeting. Woo, it's way over my head, but I gotta get with it. Right, Jack?
Well, there's just so much, choose one path. The culture, do one thing. You're not going to do it all. I've done some of this with them, and there's just so much.
Yeah.
As you saw, it's great to see Chris fumble around a little bit. Everybody does. We've all been there. So just, do a couple of decent things simply, and you'll be fine. I
I
think.
want to use my computer, just the computer that I have.
Yeah. And I think Sarah showed you some tricks. And
Great information, though.
yeah, I think the Cultura thing is going to be very helpful, but we all need to get on the same page. And that's just, so many people are going to be doing different things, and so are our students. And that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah.
But and a lot of folks are just going to be using their phones. So it's going to be the Wild West.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, there's Dr. Engel. Okay.
Okay.
We'll give it a couple of minutes. I've got 3:09, and we'll try to be respectful of everybody's time, because there is another Q&A at 5 o'clock. Not that we're going to last that long, but we at least have that much time to have our faculty senate meeting. Well, I have 3:11. Shall we begin? I'll call the meeting to order. A called meeting of the UTC Faculty Senate for 2020 in the need of giving senators updated, most current, most informative directions, and the hope that, and the request that faculty talk to colleagues and your constituents and make sure your department head is sharing this information with faculty, because there's a lot of new information and changes we need to be aware of for this current semester for fall 2020 and even looking to spring 2021. The information that we sent to you about the minutes were recorded as January 16th. Well, it was supposed to be April 16th. We can do one of two moves at your request. We can defer approval of the minutes for April 16th and today, June 18th, for the August meeting. Or if you want to take a moment to look over the April 16th minutes and move for approval now. Or you want me to make a decision?
Jamie, this is
Ron?
Goulet.
Yes.
I have I did review the minutes, and I noticed that there was no list of attendees for the meeting. Is the list of attendees somehow attainable? I'm getting to some of the well, the importance of having a quorum on any action that the Senate takes.
Then when Virginia returns, I'll see if she has that recorded, that she can then record who was in attendance for April 16th.
And conducting these meetings the way that you have to conduct them has to bring a challenge in that regards. If we are going to conduct business by votes, I'm pretty sure our parliamentarian is going to agree that we have to have a quorum. And if there's something systemic that prevents us from having a quorum, I think right now our quorum is a majority of members. Perhaps we could consider reducing the quorum number so that we can conduct business. Thanks.
Thank you.
I can say we have a quorum today. We have at least 18 members in presence, so we have reached quorum today.
So can I make a motion that we defer voting on the approval of minutes to August for April 16th and June 18th? Dawn, your input?
I'll second that motion.
Any comments or any comments? Well, all in favor of deferring the approval of the minutes to August, and Charlene will give us our date for August, that we then seek the approval in step number 2 for the approval of minutes from April 16th and June 18th, 2020. All in favor? Thumbs up or the thumb on the reaction. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Administrative report, Dr. Engel.
Thank you. I want to thank the senators, particularly those who are outgoing, for serving, for working over the summer. And I want to thank Dr. Harvey for a year that, when you think about what's come our way in this year, what a year to be Faculty Senate President. We've broken the mold in terms of what we've had to deal with, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate her service, how well she's represented the faculty. She's tried to be so inclusive of opinions and thoughts, and I think we all owe her a debt of gratitude. And if we were in person, I'd say a round of applause. But so thank you so much, Jamie. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to your continued involvement on the Faculty Senate Executive Committee as immediate past chair. We have had our task force look at how we would reopen the fall 2020 task force. Some of the things you're considering today are a part of the offshoot of the recommendations there, looking at an attendance policy and other things. I know that Matt Matthews is going to make a few comments. There are a lot of details we're still working out. Looking at our, policy for our mask wearing that we're looking at on campus and thinking about enforcing. I went downtown to get my glasses fixed at lunchtime, and I don't think I saw anybody on the street with a mask. Only in the office, the optical office, did anybody have a mask on. And I know this will be hard. We're going to work on this, and it's evolving practice. But on campus, I think we can control the spread of this virus if we all take precautions. So you'll hear a number of the things, and some of what you're going to talk about is related to that. So I appreciate everybody's support. The reopening plans are underway, and Dr. Harvey's suggestion that she and the provost have a information session on Thursdays for faculty has been a real hit. I've tried to listen in on the mornings when I can. I usually have a conflict with one in the evening with another board that I'm on, but it's, I think, been a real service to the campus community to have that. And I encourage the senators to participate in that also, and encourage the faculty you represent to participate. So with that, I'll leave it for, if you want to get questions all at the end or whatever, we could do that.
We may wait for questions at the end, Dr. Angle, because Chris Smith needs to report and go to another meeting as well as you. So, and if there are any questions, maybe if you have to leave afterwards, then I'll forward those questions to you.
Okay, thank you.
Matt Matthews, did you need to say, inform us of something?
Yes, thank you, Jamie.
Yes.
I was asked to come and tell you guys about some movement that's been happening with the task force for fall. The implementation phase has begun on the important work that we completed in the fall 2020 task force during May and June of this year. As you know, that task force assembled a comprehensive report with some extensive suggestions and recommendations for the coming academic year. Doctors Richard Brown, Yancey Freeman, and Gerald Hale are the vice chancellors that have been assigned with implementation of the changes required for our success this fall. They have appointed a team of 20 representatives from across the campus to put forward final recommendations, which will be provided to the full executive leadership team for action and implementation. That team of people includes Scott Altizer, Deputy Athletics Director, Michelle Prince, Director of Auxiliary Services, Robbie Robinson, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Safety and Security, Tom Ellis, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Operations, Tyler Forrest, Associate Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance, Laurie Pugh, Assistant Vice Chancellor of Human Services, Terry Deniston from the Chancellor's Chief of Staff, David Steele, Director of Civil Engagement, Gina Stafford, Assistant Vice Chancellor of Communication and Marketing, Greg Jackson, Technical Director for Information Technology, Cherie Whipple, Associate CIO, myself, serving as Interim Vice Provost, Donnie Beneman, our Strategic Initiatives Manager, Teresa Litka as Dean of the Library, Meredith Perry, the Director of Research and Sponsored Programs, Yasmin Key, Director of University Health Services, Abir Mustafa, Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Chris Smith, Chief Health Affairs Officer and Director of the School of Nursing, Jim Hicks, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, and Stacy Grisham, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Success. Yusuf Hamadi, Assistant General Counsel for UTC, is serving this team in an advisory capacity. Robbie Robinson and I will serve as co-chairs and will be leading the team on specific implementation recommendations through the month of July. This includes a number of important areas like classroom instruction, housing and food service services, public events, and enforcement of safety policies for faculty, staff, and students. I'd ask that you guys please look for some regular campus updates as actions are approved by the executive leadership team in preparation for fall. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can direct them to me here or to Robbie and me in email. And I would be happy to take any questions if you guys have any. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Matt. Number 4 with new business. We're going to go with B first. Dr. Chris Smith, that's been intricately involved, is going to explain to us about the fall 2020 syllabus safety policy.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Charlene, can you pull that document up? Well, looks like you're doing it. All right. We were asked to look at this to create a syllabus statement document for faculty to use, because we need, first of all, to have consistency. So I reached out to members of the campus health, safety, and risk management group, and we have done some very in-depth work on what it will be like to make sure that the campus is safe. So I pulled out some statements that are reflected in that document that we submitted to the task force. So anything that is here is nothing that is new. It's just reconditioned, so to speak, so that you all have something to put in your syllabi. What I did was there's 2 sections on this document. The one is for those courses which will be taught face-to-face, and then the second one is for those that are hybrid. Of course, online doesn't really need any syllabus statement because they'll be online and the risk is minimal. That's my opinion. If you think we need to have something for online, we'll be very happy to create something like that, but I didn't really see the need for that right now. So let's just look through it a little bit. And basically, as you all know by now, because you've heard it so much, no matter where you turn, you hear it, that the basis for us getting through this crisis is an epidemic is mitigating risk factors. So everything that's on here these are the steps that are meant to mitigate risk factors and keep the campus safe. And you can see there's probably going to be some language in here that's going to be fairly strong. So we've all heard about the daily screening app that is in development. Thanks to Dr. Pack and faculty over in engineering, they are putting the final touches on this screening application that we'll have access to. I think Dr. Brown used it when he was on campus yesterday or today, and the report went to Dr. Angle, and Dr. Angle didn't really do it because he didn't want his report to go to President Boyd. So we know it's out there, and I've used mine and it's gone to Dr. Rutledge. It is not a perfect app. We have looked at a lot of products that we could have purchased, but our College of Engineering was very forthcoming in the beginning and said, let us see what we can create for you. So we are testing it this summer to make sure that it really gives us the information that we want and that is going through the proper steps. We are talking about, well, let me back up. We totally understand the privacy aspect of this app. It is being developed in such a way that sensitive health information is not shared, and that the data are not going to be stored for any length of time. Any data, and this is where we are as of 3 o'clock today, any data that are stored will be de-identified, and it will be solely for looking at trends. And that's one of the things that we need to understand to be able to determine how our campus is faring through this pandemic. So every student, faculty, and staff member will be asked to complete an app before they come to class or to campus each day. And it's a drop-down, a very simple drop-down on a phone or it can be done on a computer. And for those individuals who do not have access to a smartphone or access easily to a computer, will be able to fill the form out paper and pencil. That information will go to supervisors, and then those people who have been tagged as should not come to campus, HR or the Dean of Students will be brought into the mix to help work through the process. So that's one thing. We're expecting everybody to do a daily screening. The use of face mask is not negotiable. And I say that because really there are some times when a face mask should be required and it's not optimum for an individual, for example, who might have a chronic health condition such as asthma, and this exacerbates their asthma. We're working through opportunity or options for those individuals. We're not quite there yet, but for the majority of the campus who are on campus and healthy, we are saying that face masks will be required for all students and faculty while in class, no matter the size of the space. Now, Dr. Matthews and his group and Dr. Frost have worked really hard on looking at sizes of classrooms. So for example, if we put 30 people in the UC auditorium, you can understand without any doubt that 6 feet of social distancing is not a problem in there. We could probably put people 15 feet apart. We don't want to confuse students or faculty, so we have just decided that no matter the size of the room, even in the arena for graduation, face masks are going to be required. So face masks, no matter the size of the space, every time. Now, we have gotten some really nice looking face masks thanks to Dr. Brown, and every faculty and staff member and student will get a couple of face masks. But we will also make sure Robbie Robinson in risk management and emergency services will make sure that all classrooms have some disposable masks in case the students or a faculty member shows up and doesn't have a face mask. So there's no real reason why someone should not be able to come into the class. I will not get into the conversation about what if a student or an individual refuses to wear a face mask. That will be either an HR issue or a student conduct issue with Brett Fuchs. I believe he's on the call. He probably can speak to this. I'm just going to talk about the basic requirements. So face mask use is required of everybody inside a building and in a hallway. You know, we can get into the conversation about, you know, what happens when you go outside. Well, we'll deal with that in subsequent trainings for faculty, staff, and students. But right now, for your syllabi purposes, face mask, the language about face mask is right here. We are expecting everybody to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. One of the newer terms is physical distancing between individuals. And Dr. Matthews, I think, has walked every building on campus, and he has looked at every classroom. And there, where there is able to be 6 feet of social distancing, those classrooms have been identified. So when you show up in your classroom, if you are teaching face-to-face or a hybrid course that meets every, you know, on a rotation system, the seats in that classroom should be such that they are 6 feet between desks, chair, tables, whatever. Now, understanding that there are going to be some places on campus where this is not going to be possible, and that would be in a lab, one of the science labs, or in nursing, for example, in the skills lab. The student, of course, will have a mask on, but we will mitigate the risk by making sure that the CDC says 10 minutes of direct contact in less than 6 feet increases someone's risk. So faculty will be working through and figuring out how to move people through those spaces, even though the 6 feet cannot be maintained. We understand that. When we started looking at all of this a couple of months ago, Dr. John McCullers, who has led the state task force, and I know some of you have heard this a couple of times already, so I apologize. but he said, you know, there are going to be times where there's going to be probably 20% of the classes that we're not going to be able to do anything about. They're going to have to be face-to-face. There's going to be, you know, 60% of those classes where social distancing will be quite easy. Then the remainder of those classes are going to be such that it's going to be just really, really difficult to maintain social distancing in the classroom. And again, the chemistry labs, the performing arts, the nursing and PT and OT clinical situations on campus. So we understand that. But the bottom line is this: we're going to try and eliminate as much of the risk as possible, and that is with face mask use and then the social distancing as well as we can. That brings me to the next two items, which is maintain good hand hygiene. We all know this by now. It's a hand sanitizer that has at least 65% alcohol base to it, or just good old soap and water for 20 seconds. Everybody's getting really good at washing their hands. So that's a no-brainer. We'll do that. And I like, you know, the thought that if you see a hand sanitizer wherever you are on campus, put your hand underneath and just take some hand sanitizer. I will charge you, however, and Dr. Brown, this is his statement, not mine, that if you see one that's empty, let someone know. If it's in a building, let the administrative assistant know it, or just call facilities, Tom Ellis's group, and they'll send someone else to fill those up right back. Now, this comes to the next part, which is disinfecting the workspace. This is going to be important, and I know it can be done because Dr. Henry Spratt from biology was on our task force that looked at campus safety. And in his labs, he said it's just expected part that when a student comes in, they disinfect their workspace, and when they're done, they disinfect it again. We've heard conversations, rightfully so, that won't this take a lot of time? And he said, absolutely not. Once the students get used to it, they go ahead and disinfect their spaces on the front and back end. Why do we do it on the front and back end? We do it on the front end because we want to make sure that the person who was there before us really did it. So it's kind of overkill, but it's very important. So in each workspace that the students are in, classrooms, labs, whatever, there will be spray bottles and paper towels or something with which you can wipe down the spaces. So it's going to be up to the faculty and the size of the class to determine how this is going to happen. You know, it's almost like I think back to kindergarten where somebody was, you know, the line monitor or something, and the little girl who started, her last name started with A, she did it on Monday, and the little boy whose name started with B did it on Tuesday. But however you want to do that, it's going to be such that the students are going to see this as part of, we hope, part of their daily routine. Now, that also includes us. We need to disinfect the podiums where we are, the keyboards that are associated with computers on the podiums, etc. We all need to get into this kind of idea of disinfecting our spaces. So those basically are just 5 tenets of what we want to do for keeping the faculty, staff, and students in a safe working environment. Doesn't seem too difficult. Again, this is a document that we've created, and if you see anything that's glaring on it, we have plenty of time to go through and make changes. I don't think we need to, and I might be very wrong, but it says that anyone who doesn't comply with these things may be in violation of the university's student code of conduct, and these are expectations. So I don't know that through the 1 through 5, we need to put what happens if you violate, you know, you don't use a face mask, you don't do your screening, you don't clean your workspace. But I think that statement handles it. But I am open to questions. I tried to keep it fairly brief. It's a lot longer than I had hoped, but I think until we get used to doing this, there needed to be a little bit of extra information in there. I put some links in here too about, you know, how to make a face mask and social distancing, etc., to help the student and the faculty deal with that. So I'm open to taking questions, and appreciate you letting us share our information. I have not looked at the chat. I've been talking. So if there's anything I need to know.
I have a question.
Sure.
In the daily screening, how, I understand you're going to enforce it by the code of conduct or HR, but so faculty, how do faculty know that their students did the self-check form before they come to class that day? And with all that data coming in, who's tracking it all? Who's going to keep track that out of this class of 40 students or however many students are in there, all of them did their check every day?
I cannot answer how the students are being funneled up right now. There was conversation that they would come to the faculty. I don't know that that is where we've landed. To be quite honest, if you have a suggestion, we are open to that, but I think it's going to faculty. And that, thank you for making that comment. One thing, and I've read all the statements. One thing that we are asking, the CDC is asking, and the statewide task force is asking, is that, and I hate to say it out loud because I know what it's gonna, the comments are, we're gonna have some discussion. I really, and I, as the collective campus safety group, would like you all to take attendance. And I don't mean it as a punitive thing. To be quite honest, and I know I understand that students might not appreciate this, is to actually have the students sit in, if they're coming face to face, sit in the same place every week. So if we have an outbreak in a composition class that meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 9:50 in X room, we can go and we know exactly who was in that class on that date, and we can, it'll make contact tracing easier. So I'm going to leave that with you all to figure if that's feasible or palatable. In the classes that I teach, I'm going to request that, and I hope my faculty does as well. I understand that we all get to make our own decisions, but I feel like this is really, really important. So if someone, for some reason, didn't complete their daily screening, or we didn't get the information back, and I promise you I will find out how we're going to funnel that to faculty for students, because that's 11,000 pieces of paper that come in multiple times a week. But this, by taking attendance and understanding where people sit, will help us with contact tracing and understanding. If we, as I said, if someone becomes positive or tests positive and they've been on campus all week in classes, that makes contact tracing easier. So my first answer is no, I can't tell you exactly how that's worked, but I will make sure you hear the answer in a reasonable amount of time, and please consider taking attendance. I know that some people have even said, I'll just take a picture of my class and I won't make them sit there, and I'll just kind of file that away. Okay, that's fine. One, you have to make sure you have good pictures of everybody and understand who's sitting where. And if a ball cap is pulled down, maybe you're not too sure who that is. I think students are creatures of habit for the most part. They do sit in the same places. It should be easy. But I think, I hate to say assigned seating, or at least a sign-in, so that we know how contact tracing can be made a little bit easier. So what else?
So that contact tracing only works for classrooms. Students go everywhere. And so I'm going to bring this up since this is coming a lot. When you listen to public health officials talking about how they really control the outbreak, and they talk about, social distancing, wearing masks, hand hygiene, all the things you have on this thing. But there's two things that are not here. That's testing and contact tracing. Contact tracing with attendance only accounts for when they're in the classroom. And there's nowhere that I've seen in terms of how we're going to deal with comprehensive testing.
Okay.
If we really want to know if somebody has COVID-19 or not, there's only one way to know definitively. My neighbor, his coworker came in and had none of the normal symptoms that someone would say that they would have for COVID-19. Had a headache. Thought it was just a headache. and they turned out they had COVID-19. None of the symptoms, none of the other normal symptoms showed up. So if someone's going through this self-check and they check all the blocks for the symptoms of COVID-19 and they're clear, but I have a slight headache. And they don't know, we don't know definitively unless we do the testing. And then how do we contact trace all the people that they came in contact when they're walking to and from campus, going to different areas, going to classrooms and not. I've had colleagues that have raised concerns with the fact that if we look at Hamilton County, our cases are not flatlining. We have been on a steady increase of the number of cases in Hamilton County. And there's a lot of concern with how we as a university are going to go open a campus and go face to face and ignore what's going on around us. We shut down in March with less. So I just want to, I'm not trying to bring all that in here, but I'm looking, since this is being put forward, it's some of the concerns that have been brought to my attention.
Okay, I appreciate you bringing that forward because you're absolutely right. I will say this, the syllabus statements does not address contact tracing or testing because this is, in my opinion, syllabi statements deal with day-to-day running your classroom. I am working right now and have been since 8 o'clock this morning on a comprehensive testing and contact tracing document that is based on CDC guidelines, the Tennessee Health Department, and the UT System Task Force. And right now it's at about 9 pages. I'm just looking at it. So please believe me, the chancellor and the executive leadership team has charged us, Dr. Key, Lori Pugh, and I, along with a lot of other people who were on the previous task force, to deal with this issue. And we are full in the middle of it. And I understand your concerns, but just please at least understand that this is a priority, contact tracing, testing and contact tracing. That's the 4 o'clock call that the chancellor and Dr. Brown and I are on, is to deal with how we are going to address this from a system-wide basis, but also leaving us the flexibility to deal with our students. We are talking about, and I hesitate to say this, but since you brought it up, I want you to hear it because it may change. We are talking about testing every student that moves into residence housing prior to coming back to campus. We're talking about, and I know athletics is already testing those athletes, student athletes who are coming back. Dr. Michelle Fiscus, who I think is the expert in this because she's leading this across the state, says that full out testing of 14,000 people on August 1st before campus opens is a waste of time and resources and manpower because it gives you a false sense of security. I use this example. I am coming back. I'm a freshman coming to UTC for the first time, and I know I have to have my test in place before I get my room key, and I get tested on August 1st. And then I go meet with my friends on the 3rd, and we go to Chili's, and we have a great time. And then we go over to Chester Frost, and we meet up with some more people. And then I show up on the 10th, and I hand them my negative test. And I've been exposed to 15 people between the 1st and the 10th, and now I have positive COVID. So there's a whole, it's so complicated. I wish it was as easy as.
That's exactly my concern. Right. That's exactly what my concern is.
Right.
And it's not a one and done kind of deal.
It is not.
So you're
exactly
right. Like there needs to be a plan and a policy and a way of doing it. And I think tests that are easily and readily accessible. Okay.
Tests that are easily and readily accessible they're great. We are looking at how reliable the results are from these tests. As days are going on, the tests are becoming better and better and better. And hopefully in the next 6 weeks, we'll have a slam dunk, not only one for viral load, but we'll have one for antibody testing. Dr. Fiscus and Dr. McCullough says that the antibody testing will do us no good until we have a vaccine or herd immunity. So to test for antibodies now really doesn't tell us exactly what we want. I think that what you're saying is absolutely 100% valid. We have to figure out how how we move forward mitigating risks. And I think that's the charge that the chancellor and the executive leadership team has given us. Will we have a definitive answer next week? We're working towards one. We really are. And I get it. I understand. The easiest thing for everybody to do across this planet would be to go home and shut themselves in their own homes and stay in their groups until this passes. But nobody can tell when that's going to happen. So I think we're just trying to figure out a good path, and open to comments. Please share those comments that I have concerns because I don't think you all have addressed this, or I feel really secure because you are going to do this. We need to hear from people. We have been so engrossed in this since March 9th that sometimes we step back and we need that outside input. We need to understand if the students are concerned about coming back to campus. We need to understand if the faculty and staff are concerned about coming to campus, because I feel like sometimes some of the information that we can share can allay fears. And I did a lot of that in March and April, just talking to people and saying, this is what we understand on this day, and this is how we're working through this. So please, I don't ever want anybody to think that we have 100% of the answers. I hope we have 90 to 95% of the answers, but I'm not so sure we do. But we just got to hear from you all and understand to try and answer those questions. So the one thing that I've told our task force as we've gone along, the most important thing we do above a daily screening, above face masks, above social distancing, washing hands, disinfecting, is communication. I think that's our most important charge, is communicating. And I think we are on the right track. Now, we want to communicate stuff, information that's accurate. So sometimes it will take us time to get back to you with the right answer. But please keep in contact, and anybody can email me, chris-smith@utc.edu. I'm open to any kind of information or any kind of concern. So I'm sorry I've taken up a really long time of your meeting.
I got one more question, because what you mentioned about learning student concern and faculty concern, as the task force or the leadership of the university reached out to the student body and the student and the faculty to get their concerns, have they developed like a questionnaire or something on that order to gain that information? Is that something that's planned to be done?
Yes, that is in process.
Inputs.
That is
Okay.
in process. And
Okay.
unfortunately, I kind of step out of some things, so I can't tell you exactly when that's coming. I think Brett Fuchs probably can answer. He might be able to answer where we are in that. But yes, that's part of the important communication. Because you know what? If I don't know what your concerns are, one, I'm not addressing the needs that you have, and two, I can't help you. So I think, again, communication, it's got to be the cornerstone of anything we do. So I appreciate your comments.
And that's one of the benefits we've drawn from the Q&As on Thursdays from 9 a.m. Well, at 9 a.m. until some of them 10:30, depending on what Provost Hale has to indicate. And the questions are enormous. And then on Thursdays at 5 o'clock, Charlene will decide, and Provost Hale, where this is going after next week. But those have been extremely beneficial questions zinged to Chris or Dr. Smith and the administration. So that's been an outlet. Sorry,
Jamie,
Brett.
I'm going to answer one more question, then I'm going to have to move on to the next one. And please, again, send me questions. Brian has asked what percentage of the campus needs to be infected before we shut down. And Brian, I wish I could say it was a number, but it's a constellation of factors. It's whether there's a significant rise. And I tried to get this answer. I called the health department and I said, okay, what number do we have to have when you're going to shut us down? And they said, not my problem. That's your problem. You got to figure that out. So I went to the statewide task force and I said, what is our tipping point? And they said, well, there's not really a tipping point. There's a bunch of factors. If we don't have the wherewithal to test or isolate or quarantine either students or faculty. If we see a significant rise in the community, now we've had a trickle up and we're getting I would call it more of a significant rise over the last week. If we run out of hospital beds, if we don't have a way for us to manage the campus, that's when we shut it down. So a percentage is not necessarily the number, Brian. It could be as low as, and I'm making this up, 5%. If we have 1,000 cases every day for a week in Hamilton County, that's significant, but we only have 5% of our faculty, staff, and students infected. That's important to know. If our hospitals are on divert because they have so many cases coming in that they can't handle, that's significant. We need to talk about what we need to have happen. If we can't relocate our students to isolation or quarantine because we've run out of space, that's significant. And I think that's when the executive leadership team will come together and make a decision on what's in the best interest of the campus.
Brett, do you have some input, please?
Right, and I'm leaving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, very much.
No, I was just going to say on this, it's a work in progress. I think that the concerns about students are the same concerns we have on the student affairs side. There's been a group working with academic affairs, particularly Matt Matthews, that put a survey out to students already where OPR is looking at the results now. One of my concerns I'll share quite frankly with everybody is, what do we do with results of 11,000 students on a daily basis? There's not one office that has capacity to review those results, right? So I've been asking that question since day one myself, because often that task falls on one of my teams, but I could tell you with all that's going on, no one area can do that. And I think it'll be hard for faculty themselves to process that as well. So I don't know that there's an answer. I've dropped one of the reporting forms into the chat, and that's the most important form because that's what's being used when people are exhibiting symptoms. The answers still remain, though, of students or individuals, I should say, who are asymptomatic or not having the full symptoms. There will be infection. I think we all fear. It's just managing it from there. So we're going to do the best that we can. I can tell you from this side of the house that we will support in whatever way we can. It's part of the reason that we always push for policies and procedures to be put in place so we can support the academic side of the house. It's why we drafted an attendance policy, which has been kind of a long, ongoing issue, but one that is particularly relevant given COVID. So I'll be quiet from now. And
right, here's a thought. And you said in terms of tracking 11,000, reports. Have you guys put any thought into where you look at the first class that the student is coming to and look at where it's kind of a go, no go notification to the faculty member, or a consolidated email where they just receive a list, go, no go, yes, the student has done their form, this one hasn't, right? And that's it. You wouldn't have to worry about necessarily with, someone says they have symptoms or not. You don't have to get into that at that level. It's kind of just letting them know that, hey, everybody's doing what they need to be doing at that level. And that way faculty aren't doing it for every class. That's just a kind of a wild idea that I just had while listening to your comments.
No, it's been one of the things that's been discussed. I think part of the struggle is some of our students start class at 8 and some of them start class at 2. So when does that happen? And with widely varying schedules, it's how do we balance that? So it gets confusing and figuring out and getting that to match a software program that's been put together fairly quickly makes it even more complex. So that's the piece that's being worked through now is trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. And honestly, getting 11,000 students to comply with filling out the form on a daily basis. I think folks reviewing the forms already will tell you, and I've been on campus throughout COVID, albeit very quiet in the office. I've been the only one here until very recently, and there's still only 1 or 2 people here. Yeah, if we can't get faculty and staff to fill out the screening form, it's going to be impossible to get students to fill it out. So it's going to be difficult for sure.
Yeah, I know that's some of my concern is I know how students are with course evaluations. So when we're talking about something like this, how do you incentivize them to do it? If they figure out that enforcement's a problem, I'll just tell you, if students figure out enforcement's a problem, they won't do it. That's what'll happen. Because they'll figure out, I'll take my chance. They didn't catch Joe yesterday, so they're probably not going to catch me today.
Absolutely. That's exactly the concern that I have, as being the one who both supports students in one office that I oversee, as well as enforcing policy in the other office. So it's on the top of my mind, and I don't know what the answer is either. I'm very concerned. So.
If there are no further comments on that, but keep thinking, write down your notes, as Dr. Smith, Brett, all of these individuals who are extremely involved as we're getting closer. Keep those ideas coming for the good of all of us. The next is back to A in new business.
Jamie, there's some good questions coming up in the chat that we need to.
Okay. I'll
And
get to
Jamie,
that in a
just
minute.
a comment about the syllabus statements. There are online classes that do meet. There's not very many, but the official definition of an online class at UTC is that there can be face-to-face meetings. So we might want to adjust these syllabus statements, or at least explain that there could be some changes that need to be made if they're doing like an orientation session at the beginning of the semester, or just meeting for a final exam. They would need to use those same precautions.
So Dawn, are you saying that possibly include that in all syllabi just in case they come to campus, or if the instructor has online but students are coming to campus?
Right.
Yeah. If
they have an online class but still have one or two face-to-face meetings, they would need to have this in their syllabus.
Okay, good point.
Would be my recommendation.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Dawn, I just have a quick question. Is there any statement that's been developed for online classes, or a recommendation for what we might put in for students who may become sick while they're in class, and considerations for those students who might need extra time getting work done, or might have to take a week or two off of class, even for the online classes?
Angel is going to help address that, Stephanie, with the next part of class attendance. Yep. So that's a good segue. Linda Frost and Angel was on the task force, as well as Matt Greenwell and John Tucker took the lead on going in the direction of providing an attendance policy. So Dr. Frost and Angel.
I'll defer to Angel, and I can follow up after she talks, if that's okay.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Angel Collier. I'm the Associate Director within the School of Nursing. I did have the privilege of serving on the Subcommittee of Academic Instruction and Continuity, and we came up with a lot of recommendations, but one that we felt was very important was an attendance policy. It was so important that we had to develop a subcommittee within the subcommittee for this attendance policy. Within the subcommittee of the subcommittee, we started looking and just talking about all the different things that happen across campus, the different modalities, you know, face-to-face, hybrid, online, labs, clinicals. And at that point, we just didn't feel like we could, as a subcommittee, come up with a one-size-fits-all policy. We just wanted to make some recommendations and some guidelines and have this as the start of the conversation. But the one thing we all agreed on is we can't have students coming sick to campus, bottom line. I mean, if they've got COVID symptoms, they cannot come sick. Even if we do all these safety measures, like Dr. Smith talked about, the mask, the hand sanitizer, if they feel like they're going to be penalized for coming to campus, then they're going to show up sick. So we have to create this new culture to where students are allowed to kind of miss class when they need to, not to take advantage of the situation, but feel like if I miss this class, I'm going to get a 0 for my participation grade. I'm not going to be able to make up my test, things like that. So that's what we wanted to get, that we've got to change the culture, at least temporary. So we started with this and kind of developed some verbiage as we feel like the start of a conversation that we didn't want to get dismissed. One of the things that we felt that attendance was not the only measure of engagement, that, participation, doing your work on time, getting everything done when it was supposed to be done, when possible, or as close as possible, those were all measures of engagement. If you'll scroll on down, I'm not going to read this verbatim to you, but I'll just point out some of the highlights of what we drafted. In this draft, we said that the departments may want to develop their own policy. I know looking at, after seeing the meeting today, the student of concern, or Brett Fuchs' office, they have a policy that they've drafted, which is great. But we may have to look at it because certain, like nursing, we have an accrediting body that we have to answer to. And if they miss, and I think you put on there 3 clinicals, some of our clinicals are only 6 weeks long. So, I mean, six shifts. So that may not be a possibility. The other thing is we talked about the attendance is not the sole measure. Bottom line, we just cannot penalize students who are sick with COVID type symptoms, because we don't want them to come to class and spread their virus. We put in some faculty responsibilities. One is to maintain the academic standards and to meet student learning objectives, to provide equal learning opportunities on and off campus. When possible, modify assignments and allow for online instruction, and then remain sensitive to the unique challenges. And again, this is hopefully temporary. I don't know how long temporary will last. On down, we put in some student responsibilities that they are expected to assume responsibility for their own learning. They are expected to attend when they're not sick, unless they're in quarantine for asymptomatic COVID. If they have risk factors, then that would, like asthma or something like that, that might put them at a higher risk category, than that we would encourage them to register with the DRC. And then we expect students to communicate with faculty clearly before, if they're going to be out. If you'll scroll on down, we just put the other thing we felt like was important, so sometimes we hear that faculty may go rogue or give zeros for things they're not supposed to give zeros for. We felt like the student would need a right to have an appeals process in case they were given an absence and they didn't feel like it was warranted. On down is just a draft sample of something that could be put into a syllabus statement. But again, like it says at the very, very bottom, there's no one size fits all. Today, so I was asked to present this last week, and when we made this policy a couple of weeks ago, there's been a lot of great work. I saw Dr. Smith, about completing the daily screening. If students have a fever, that they should put that. But again, we've got the problem of how that's going to be reported. Brett Fuchs, his office has Maxiot form that they should fill out. And then he has another attendance policy that's more prescriptive than what we had, which, again, we just wanted this to be the start of the conversation, and we just didn't want it to fall off of our recommendations for our subcommittee. So I'm going to turn it over, I guess, back to Jamie or Brett Fuchs, whoever, or Linda.
Linda?
I just
Frost?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple things. Angel said really everything of substance, but I think the important things to keep in mind, as she said, is we don't want students to come to class sick, because that doesn't protect any of us, right? That's protective of both students and faculty. Maybe the most important sentence in the draft policy that Angel subcommittee came up with, subcommittee came up with, is attendance policies must not penalize students who cannot attend class because they're ill, symptomatic, at risk, or in medical quarantine. The other piece, when we were talking about this in one of the larger task force meetings, is that we cannot expect that every student who is feeling yucky is going to be able to get a sort of doctor's note, right? Or a note from the health center, the student health center. That's just that they'll be inundated, that we're not going to be able to do that. So we really have to think differently about how we manage attendance. It was not our committee's objective to come up with a policy for the campus, but we've drafted language, and of course Brett's policy is here as well. They're not Brett's policy, but the policy that he's been working on is here for Faculty Senate. Faculty Senate is really the body that needs to determine attendance policy for the campus. But it's to all of our good that we have something like this on the books. That's kind of the big thing I wanted to note.
It may behoove us to create an ad hoc committee for an attendance policy out of Faculty Senate, 5 or 6 members. Angel, would you mind being a part of that to continue? And
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Charlene is working on the new committees of faculty, but for this purpose, it needs to be senators. And Charlene, you and Angel can talk through, if you want, some of us from this current Senate and those that are going forward, because some are moving off and other new ones are coming, new senators are coming on. So if in the next week, Angel, you and Charlene can speak about the possibility, but senators, it may not be a conversation for Charlene and Angel if there's 5 or 6 of you that contact Angel that you want to surround yourselves with this and give it, and you and Charlene can decide on how much time you want before it goes out to us.
Yeah, if you're interested, my email is angela-collier.
I think we need to, though, first make a decision as a Senate, because essentially we have 2 different options. In theory, one option is to allow each department to create their own policy following some basic guidelines. The other approach is for the Faculty Senate to create one policy that everyone has to adopt. And I think we need to make that decision today. If we choose to go with the approach that was that's suggested by the task force subcommittee, then really what we need to do is make that decision today. Okay, we're going to ask each department to make a policy following some guidelines. Then we need to make that decision today, because we need to give departments the time the next month to come up with their own policies. If we choose instead to go the other approach, which is one policy for everyone to follow, then yeah, we create an ad hoc task force that will work and bring something back to a call July meeting. But I think we're kind of skipping the key question, which is who do we want to make the decision about what the syllabus policy looks like? Is it going to be made at a department level following some larger guidelines, or is it going to be at a university-wide level led by the Faculty Senate?
Can I say one more thing? But you're absolutely right, and I'm not part of Senate, but I just wanted to qualify one thing. Not having students physically present, I mean, we're talking about face-to-face classes here, right? That's really what we're talking about. And not having students physically present doesn't mean that they're not involved in the class. And I think what we're trying to do with many, if not most, if not all of our face-to-face classes is set up technological sort of situations where faculty could actually Zoom in students who cannot physically be present in the room. There's a lot of activity about buying webcams and trying to outfit the campus as best we can for that to be possible. So I just want to make that caveat as well. But I'm sorry, you're talking about who needs to decide. And I absolutely agree. That's right.
And that's the direction we were learning with the task force. We wanted to make an overall attendance policy, yet the departments know themselves the best and what qualifications, like Angel mentioned with nursing, the clinicals, theater,
Right.
speech, labs, the sciences. We were finding from that task force that as many departments as there are, were as many varied expectations.
I will say the reason that we drafted a policy and spent time researching it before we sent it to anybody for campus-wide is that there is a lot of inequity across the campus currently between different policies, different procedures, and even when colleges adopt policies, it seems to not trickle down to the departments or they're not followed. So certainly some of the specific number of days can be adjusted in the proposal that we put forward, but that's what I've extrapolated from faculty already on campus. And the draft policy, again, and certainly it will need more work, but the draft policy talks about the fact that the work still needs to be done, going back to what Linda's saying. It's providing the opportunity for an alternate assignment or to Zoom into class or whatever it may be. But we also, what some of our faculty miss, and that may not be the problem of the faculty senators, but I will tell you, as the person who gets these complaints, I get calls on a daily basis from parents wanting to know, their son or daughter's grandparents passed away, and they want to know why their son or daughter was told by X, Y, or Z faculty member they can't go to the funeral. Or they got admitted to the hospital last night, and the faculty member tells them, well, you better show up for my class or you're going to get a 0 for today. And while people don't want to believe it's happening, I could name off hundreds of cases a year that this is happening with. So without having a universal policy, not to mention that our students take classes across divisions, so having different policies confuses our students. It really makes it complicated. Certainly, we need to take into consideration that there are different department issues, right? There are different accreditation body issues, and that may be, if you scroll down in the policy, it talks about, course instructor may deny verified requests. That may need to be modified a bit to add a caveat there about the fact that certain programs may have accreditation standards, and that may need to be adjusted. But that was the reason this draft was come up with, because already we verify the absences for students outside of COVID, of course, for deaths, illness, whatever it may be for faculty. So that's already a process that we're doing, but more so it's the issue of just making sure our students are given an equitable chance. The work still needs to be done unequivocally. The student still needs to make up the work. If they don't, then they need to talk about the withdrawal process or an incomplete process if it's applicable for the class. But again, I would tell you, as the person who deals with these concerns and complaints, I have significant concerns with each department coming up with its own policy, because we will create such inequities. And then they will go to that student complaint process, which if anybody's gone through it, I'm the one who sends the information out. There's such radical different perspectives on what's okay and not okay between faculty members, department heads. Then Grade Appeals Committee often gets involved in those as well, makes it even more complex. So the goal of this draft that we put forward, again, not to say this one has to be it, but is to try to address some of that, to make sure it's equitable for both the faculty and making sure students meet course learning objectives, but also are given a fair chance to get the work done and given the required or needed absence that they need from the class while still making up the work that they've missed. And then going back to Alex Savelin's question about students with COVID, that's a concern I have as well. With being able to, with students taking advantage of the policy, that's certainly going to happen. But right now, because even if we did mass testing, it's going to be at least 24 hours before we get results, if not longer. I'm not sure what we'll do. And even if we did mass testing, it's unclear of how many tests we will be able to do a day for students who may be having symptoms related to COVID. So,
if I can add, Brett, I'm kind of on board with everybody using a common draft, using this policy, and maybe we kind of take away a little bit of something where, you can add to, but you can't take away kind of mentality, where departments can add in sections that are tailored to specific needs based on, modalities or courses that, this doesn't necessarily address. Because the other thing that I look at it as, this is summer and most of the faculty shut off and disappear. And to get, a department, all the faculty to be involved and give inputs and put something together, you might have a tough, might be tough to make that happen. Versus if we use a common policy that kind of creates the core of all policies across the university, and let departments where they need to add to it, but they can't reduce or take away from it.
I agree. I think we can come up with a policy that is general enough that would fit most of the university, and then have our little caveats within the department that would meet the department needs. It just have to be word crafted very well. And to address the question about students taking advantage of the policy, I have thought of that as well. But just like with any other time, if I have a concern, if I have a student who's missed 3 or 4 classes, I'm going to send a student of concern form. Sorry, Brett Fuchs, you've got job security for the next couple of semesters.
So the direction we want to go is the ad hoc with Brett's draft to still review with Dawn's suggestions. Also, Dawn, you can contact Angel, please. And Brett, you be ready to go with your contributions continued. Charlene, does that answer?
I think we should take a vote because we've heard from 2 senators. So if, I think we need to take a vote just to decide which approach we're going to take. Okay. Are we going to take of trying to draft a university-wide policy through an ad hoc committee? Or are we going to take the approach of the task force, which was to hand this to departments to decide? So I think we need a vote on that and just get it on record so that every senator has an opportunity to voice their opinion.
Okay. Are you making a motion?
Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
I just ask that you make it really clear what you're actually asking us to vote on, because that was a little
Okay.
confusing even for me.
Dawn and Charlie.
To me, it's, you would vote. Would you prefer an institution-wide policy, or would you prefer a department design policy? So to me, it's a question of who do you want to design the policy, institution-wide by the ad hoc committee or department level committees?
So let's make the motion based on voting for an institutional-wide
But we can
policy.
have, I'm sorry, I'm confused. If we have a university-wide one, we can still have some caveats in there for different departments as needed for accreditation.
Yes, and
That's
maybe
what Dawn
that's
was
part of the
looking-
motion. Maybe make that
Yes.
part of your motion, is that
You have to
the
make that.
motion is to vote for a university-wide policy that allows for caveats tailored based on accreditation requirements or specific course modalities.
And I think the motion is, if you want to do an institutional motion, I mean, to me, I would just do a vote, I don't think, to me, we can actually have a vote that's not yes or no, but which would you prefer? Would you prefer institutional level or department level? We can vote that way. If we want to write a motion that's favoring one or the over the other, so you have to vote yes or no, the motion for the institutional would be form an ad hoc committee to draft an institutional policy that will be voted on by the faculty senate in July.
All right, let's make that your motion right there. I think it's easier than, you have one vote, and you vote either to do this as an institutional policy by an ad hoc committee, or you want departments to drive their own. If you vote no, you're for the alternate of departments drafting their own policies and pushing it.
Well, if we vote it down, then we have to have a second vote. So I think we just, for a moment, suspend our idea that every motion has to be a yes or no, and just say, and we could do a roll call vote so everybody gets to say their vote. To me, I've been in meetings where roll call votes are the most effective of getting everyone's vote. Is just to go down the row and say, would you like institutional level policy or department level policy? And each person could say institution or department, and we could add it up at the end. To me, that's the easiest.
I'm good with that. I'm
one
good with
vote.
that.
Are people cool with that?
I'm good
Yeah,
with it.
are we going to have some discussion about?
Yeah.
More discussion?
Yeah, we're not, yeah, we could still have the discussion. We haven't called the question, I guess.
Jimmy, allow me to say a couple of words about this discussion.
Please.
On many occasions, our provost said, and he said that repeatedly, that he is not going to micromanage the university. Those who attend the meetings with provost could hear this on several occasions. If we have the university policy on that, then what would be the role of the department? Can department in its policy to overrule some pieces of the university policy, or what? Who will decide whether, say, we have a policy, and then our department decides that whatever line here should be eliminated. Are we allowed to do this or not? What are we going to vote for? That's my question. Thank you.
Dawn was speaking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dawn, but taking the student attendance policy draft, which Brett has submitted, and the ad hoc committee possibly looking through it, and Dawn recommended that the departmental contributions could be made to add, not to take away any of what's being submitted. Correct, Dawn?
Yeah, exactly. So like the math department might have specific requirements that aren't in there, but we don't want to diminish the student attendance policy as a whole. Like, like if you're, I think, one of the things that I've kind of looked at since we went to online courses in March is I looked at it as my view of my student attendance and my courses was flexibility, be flexible. Because we're all learning and adapting, and that should remain in place. I think we all have to be flexible and realize that students, need to be given that room. I would personally, if a student, I saw Alex's question about students taking advantage of the policy. I would rather have a student take advantage and say they're sick and not come to class than come to class because they're sick, because they're afraid of a grade impact and infect other people. That's a worst case scenario for me. I'd much rather have them stay home, and I'll work with them individually as a faculty member to get the coursework they need done. I'll go so far as to say, I'll give them an incomplete for the semester and let them finish outside the term if that's how it impacts their, if that's how the situation impacts them, right? So I think we should keep, what I'm saying is there are departmental needs that may not be directly addressed with this draft policy. So allow the departments to add in that language as needed, but give them kind of this general framework to say, this is the baseline. This is what you have to start from. You can add stuff to it, but you can't come in here and take this baseline and start removing stuff and changing those requirements.
Steve?
I have a couple of things. One, we are talking about a temporary attendance policy or not?
I view it as temporary.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, my thought is that this would be an attendance policy for the fall, and then the faculty senate would revisit it in October, November, look at how it went, get feedback from faculty, see what the problems were, see if it's still needed in the spring. My guess is we will need some type of policy in the spring, but we could have an opportunity in October and November to revise and then adopt another policy for the spring. But this is not an attempt to adopt a policy that will be permanent. This is a policy for the fall.
So,
sorry, Charlene, there is one detail in that. It means that whatever we announce as this attendance policy may not be included in syllabus. Yes, in syllabi, because or we have to add words. We may amend this in October or November or whatever. How do we proceed?
No, whatever we would eventually adopt, whether it's today or in July, would be for the entire fall semester. You would put it in your syllabus. It would be for the entire fall semester. Then later in fall, we would then talk about adopting a policy for the spring. So a new same one for the spring, or whether we need to revise it for the spring.
Makes sense. Yep.
It seems to me that if we're looking for the most flexibility, this should happen at a department level. Because I'm looking at Brett's the policy that he and his group put together, and it has, if I'm not mistaken, Brett, you can address this. At the bottom, it kind of indicates that we'll set 3 absences or 2 assignments as the limit, as the university-wide policy, which is, it seems to me maybe wouldn't suit all departments. And also, I'm concerned if we do that, then does that not make it, I don't know, perhaps too rigid, or open up for litigation and some other things if certain departments have stricter? And that gets to the other question: what is adding to and what is taking away? Can you subtract? Can some say math say we only allow 2? Is that adding to or is that taking away?
So what I would recommend is the days of the number of assignments we put in there are what we extrapolated from other policies that some of the faculty on our campus are already using. That was the consensus of the number of assignments, of number of labs over all of the classes we've looked at and what faculty have granted. However, that may be the one section that's not specified of exactly the number, right? So that may be up to the department. However, I want to put it out there, and I will not name drop departments, but there are departments that tell students, I'm not giving you any. And I think that answer, and again, I'm not a senator, but I think that answer from a student advocacy perspective is also not acceptable, right? To tell a student that you must come to class if you're ill is a little bit unreasonable. Not to say work doesn't need to be made up or figured or fit in some other way, which this policy talks about. So the rigidity of the numbers may be exactly what needs to be discussed by the task force, right? Again, I threw those in there, again, based on what we extrapolated from other people. But again, part of this was put together not just for COVID, but overall, because illnesses, deaths in the family are not going to go away. COVID has highlighted the issue, but has not isolated the issue. So again, departments may come up with a specific number, again, to Boris's point of, maybe math needs 2, maybe chemistry needs 1, maybe theater needs 4. I don't know what the magic number is for each department. There just needs to be something equitable to say this is what it's going to be. So if the faculty senate adopts a policy, it's very easy for us to put it on a website and then say, for each department, you can then view the number of absences. Here's the overall policy, here's the process. Whereas if there's no policy or 30 different policies, it's much more cumbersome for our students. So certainly the numbers are not my recommendation that those are the numbers we specifically stick with. Again, that's from looking at all of the student requests that we received, the syllabi that we've received from faculty, and trying to extrapolate what would be the best across the board. I don't think that's a one size fits all though. So certainly I think department input into certain areas like that would be very, very welcome.
Well, I just want to talk about the difficulty with mandating these numbers in this way. One is that 3 course sessions for Monday, Wednesday, Friday class is very different from 3 course sessions for a once a week evening class. The other is that when we say you may miss 2 course assignments, I have course assignments that range from 10-point quizzes to 150-point papers, and this weights those the same. So I have some concerns about our mandating language at this level of granularity, because I think we can already see how it's not flexible enough to account for, you can absolutely miss 3 Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. If you miss 3 graduate school level night classes, you probably can't adequately complete the course.
Right, and I think that goes back to taking the numbers out and making that a department decision. Or even a course decision if that's the way the faculty senate wants to go. I think if Charlene, if you scroll back up a little bit, the goal of this is to point out that instructors should provide alternative assignments for students when something is missed, if it's a legitimate excuse. And that's really the point of this, is that across the board, the faculty will say if there's a legitimate reason, which will be verified, that there's an opportunity to make up that work in the appropriate manner, if it's appropriate. However, going back to the point, if this is a nursing course and you've missed all of your labs or all of your clinicals, that's certainly not reasonable, right? If you're in a theater production and you miss all of the practices, it's not going to be reasonable for you to get a grade or participate. Or graduate classes, if you've missed all of your night classes, certainly that's not reasonable. So I think that's certainly something that can be removed. Again, we extrapolated this thinking broadly. The numbers that you see at the top are really just how many days people should be reporting, how quickly reports will be reviewed, but the number of assignments, the number of classes, again, I am in full support of removing those. I just stuck those in there. This is completely a draft. This is language that we tried to put together from looking at what our faculty are currently doing across the board that's working and what other institutions have done. So it's not to suggest that those are the exact numbers by any means, because I know even in classes that I've taught that those numbers would not always work.
And I just say, I think I could absolutely support this as a university-wide policy without that last section, and with something in that last section that said it could be adjusted. I think at the course level, that everything else I can absolutely support as a university-wide policy. I just think that gets a little too granular.
Yeah, I think honestly, if you strike the policy after the line that says the course instructor may deny verified request, it probably meets everybody's needs because it doesn't set specific numbers of assignments that instructors will need to address. It just says here are the options and that the course instructor may deny if there's a reason for that. Other than the very last line, which addresses, there's actually state law that addresses some absences that must be allowed. For example, students who are in the National Guard or military must be excused from class by state law and given incompletes, which most faculty don't know. So we added that to the end because that's something that a lot of faculty are not familiar with.
I want to add one more thing, and that is that, or maybe qualify. I think right now you're just trying to figure out how you're going to come up with the policy, right? And I think that these kind of conversations, I agree with Sarah and other people have talked about the numbers, that they're problematic. There are things that aren't in here that I would like to see in, basically protecting students who are representing the campus if they're presenting a paper at a national conference, something like that. That's another attendance piece that we don't really account for at UTC. But remember, I would just encourage you all to remember that what we're trying to do is come up with a policy that protects the public health of the campus when kids are here. And we want to just make sure that that policy discourages them from coming to class when they are ill, and find some way for faculty to make peace with the fact that they may have a student who isn't in class for 2 weeks. I mean, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about quarantine, and how you maneuver that work and how that communication needs to happen. This is a really different kind of attendance policy, is my thinking.
Steve, what are your thoughts after kind of what Brett said after removing those numbers? Does it make you feel a bit more?
I don't know. I think, Brett, your document is one that we've discussed before a lot of this. That I think the idea of equity is just so complex. Equity for one class is different for another. Yeah. And I think that, to me, it's back to what Dr. Frost is saying. This is about COVID and not about establishing our attendance policy for students who feel inequity. And I don't know. I think we should focus on a temporary policy that encourages faculty or requires faculty to have a little more flexibility in this specific moment, with the idea that this is a temporary policy, not a permanent change in addressing the idea of equity that students feel.
I agree with you, Steve. And I was going to suggest that we put in like a preamble or at the beginning of this, that this is only in effect for fall of 2020, and that it will be reviewed based on the current situation with COVID-19 toward the end, when Charlene kind of said the faculty don't review it for spring again, right? So I think that language should be put at the front of this, so faculty know that this is not a permanent policy. The reason it is being put into existence is due to the COVID-19 situation, and to keep the public health in mind at the forefront of this, as Linda said, which I think is absolutely paramount. And then we state that this will be reviewed for spring based on, the progression and where we are in terms of COVID-19.
I will say I agree with Linda, and I agree with the fact that a temporary policy is needed. I think part of this is a larger discussion about student attendance overall, which seems to get lost. And again, an issue across the board. And that's part of the reason this was drafted originally. It just happened to be COVID came along. But, this is an issue across the board. This is, COVID is a very large issue. But this is an issue that our students are facing. And certainly there's a difference of opinion from faculty at times. And I will say that most of the faculty senators on here and faculty in the room are the ones who are fairly understanding. So you're looking at it going, well, why would I need this, right? But I will tell you that that is not reflective of all of your peers. And that's why this has been drafted. So I know that's easy for, that's easy to say, but that's just the reality that we go through. We get those student complaints. Those of you who are department heads know, because we contact you often when we get those complaints. COVID's just, as Linda pointed out, the most concerning and most pressing right now, because we have to figure out a way to get across to faculty that we need to provide students the opportunity to still participate in some way, even though that participation may look different. My point is that plus, right? That plus after COVID, we still also need to do this. If a student is sick they have mono, mono may put them out of class for 2 weeks as well, but we haven't considered that fact. And we have students who have to withdraw and lose potentially $5,000 or $10,000 a semester. Or a student who had a parent who passed away who's then failed a class because they missed a test because the instructor wouldn't give them the leniency to do so. And I wish I was saying that these were extremes, but they really aren't. These are things that we see on a daily basis.
Maybe a suggestion is that we take this as two separate conditions, right? One that is the policy based to address the COVID-19 situation, and a bigger, longer term view where it's not addressed in this session, but maybe over the next semester or over this next year in terms of attendance policies, and look at those issues. I agree with you. I had a student who was National Guard member, and he came up to me, and not knowing that I had served in the National Guard, asked me, said, I have drilled, and I'll be out, I don't know. And I made my 2-week may overlap with the end of spring term. We haven't decided the dates yet. And I said, okay, it's not a worry. He goes, by law, I'm excusing the absence. And I looked at him and I said, I know, I wore the uniform for 10 years, so I know. But you're right. I have colleagues in my department who have way harsher requirements when it comes to attendance. And so I do think it's an issue that we need to address across the campus, but maybe it should be kind of split up into two parts.
I think you're going to find that if you put something in place for fall, you're going to have a lovely pilot that you can look at and see what makes sense and what doesn't.
I would just like to ask, how is a policy going to be incorporated into our governance? An ad hoc committee for attendance? Attendance is part of the handbook. And a policy regarding attendance might best be dealt with through a modification to the handbook. And if you look at how much has been stated in the handbook historically over the last 22 years, very little. That might point to the fact that it's very difficult to nail down many specifics regarding a handbook policy. So I would, regarding the motion, I believe it hinges on an ad hoc committee to study the question, just on the basis that it's a handbook issue. I wouldn't support it. Thanks.
Well, I think we're still facing the basic question of we're going to attempt to have a university-wide policy, which then, yes, we need an ad hoc committee to do their work in the next month and come back with something tangible for the faculty senate to vote on as a temporary measure for the fall. Or are we going to endorse the task force approach, which is to have departments make their own policies using the broad guidelines that the task force have set out? So we still have that same basic question of which level is this, who's generating the policy for the fall, a temporary fall policy, who's generating it? Is it the faculty senate through an ad hoc committee at an institutional level, or is it going to be at the department level? So we still have that basic question.
Yeah, Charlene, that's precisely what I was going to say. Why do not we proceed as follows? Here is a policy. It's written by our colleagues. It's based on the experience of other institutions. And certainly the main goal here is to keep our students, our faculty, our staff healthy. Everybody understands this. Why do not we do the following? Here's the policy. We ask every department officially through the chancellor, provost, whatever level, to prepare a version of this policy based on these ideas, but the policy should be our own. You see, I do not see some details here that, for example, I use systematically in my classes. And I can give you one example. In my calculus classes, a student may just ignore one test and one quiz. They are not counted. The formal words are these. The test with the lowest score, the quiz with the lowest score are removed, no matter what, whether a student is sick or I don't know what. So again, why do not we just request or ask all heads of the department to prepare this policy based on these ideas, which are very good, and then ask the committee which prepared that policy to look through the policy of a particular department and say, hey, we believe you should amend this piece and that piece. Will it be okay with both divisions? Who is doing what?
Well, I would like to suggest we put to a vote, just call on each senator to say, would you prefer an institutional level policy, which then we will, if that is the majority vote, we will form an ad hoc committee, which will come back in July with a policy. So that's, you know, institutional level means creating an ad hoc committee to create an institutional level policy that will be reviewed in July at a called meeting of the new faculty senate that takes effect on July 1st. Or your option B is to go with the task force suggestion, which is to have a department level policy. So essentially two choices, and unless people want to continue to debate, I feel like it's time we kind of vote institutional level, department level.
Okay.
Somebody would need to call the question of.
Call the question.
Okay.
Yeah, except one detail, very minor detail. We understand, I hope, that even if we vote this or that way, the real policy becomes, university policy becomes the policy after we have the vote of the joint faculty meeting. Is that right?
And we have to realize there has been a heap of work already toward this progress. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to get it as compassionate, as fair, as consistent, as equitable as possible. And like Brett has said, he's kind of preaching to the choir right here. Yet we've got to get more choir members involved, and that's our responsibility as senators to go in this direction for this semester, maybe the academic year.
And Jamie, since I've been kind of voluntold to be on this committee, if we come up with a policy, it still has to be voted. It's something everybody would still have to agree on before it's brought forward. Am I correct?
Charlene? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, again, two options. It's institutional level choice is form an ad hoc committee that will draft something and will return in July to vote and edit, etc. Option B is move forward with departments meeting and deciding on a department level policy. So either way, the end policy is based on faculty voting, but is the voting happening at the department level using the guidelines provided by the task force, or is it happening at the faculty senate level based on an ad hoc committee suggestion and a meeting in July? So two options.
So we either say institutional / ad hoc, but say institutional, or departmental. Am I clear on that as far as what senators are going to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Is everybody good? Then if you don't mind, we're going to do a roll call vote. I'm also playing the role of secretary, and I want to get this right. So a roll call vote, I'll call your name. If you'll just say institutional or departmental, I'll mark it down. We're going to hit some names that aren't here, but I want to make sure that I get everybody. So I'm gonna, if there's just nobody answers, we'll move on, they're absent. Everybody good? Okay, now I'm just gonna go in the order that's on the website, starting with the at-large senators. Nicholas Bohr,
Yeah, I'd do it at the departmental level.
David Giles, Angela Collier,
Institutional.
Deborah McAllister,
Institutional.
Susan Thole,
Institutional.
Jack Ziblick, Kimberly Carter, Natalie Osley,
Institutional.
Stephanie Todd,
Sorry, couldn't hit unmute. Departmental.
Alex Zellen,
Institutional.
Ahmed Kool, Allison Allerton, Streetberg,
Charlene, you might not have said that name clearly or it didn't come through.
it's Ann. She was having problems muted. Ann.
Yeah, institutional.
Pardon me, Ann, sorry.
That's okay.
Sarah Einstein,
Institutional.
Jose Luis Gastonanga, and sorry if I mispronounce names. He's not here. Han Park, Boris Belinsky,
Departmental.
Joshua Hamblin,
Institutional.
Hill Craddock, Hunter Holzenhauer, Phil Roundy.
He voted institutional in the chat.
Okay. Spencer Usury,
Institutional.
Ignatius Bowman, sorry, the cat. Ignatius Bowman. Ron Goulet,
Department.
Hong Quinn, Donald Reising,
Institutional.
Shelley Costello, Hinsdale Bernard,
Institutional.
Liz Hathaway,
Department.
Joni Jackson,
Institutional.
Barry Camrith,
Institutional.
Mark Stoutenberg, Noah Lassie,
Institutional.
Ryan Rogers.
Institutional.
Okay, Jamie Harvey,
Institutional.
Steve, do you get a vote? Steve Ray?
I think I do as a past president.
Okay, Steve.
I'll say departmental.
Okay, did I miss anyone who's a 2019-20 senator? Okay, I'll add it up and I'll get back. We can continue on to the next thing.
Thank you for the intensive and deliberate conversation. That was much needed, and thank you so much. With new business with C, online contingency plan for the syllabus, my understanding of this direction is when you have a face-to-face class, you really make two sets of plans. I'm living it myself. I have 4 face-to-face classes in the fall, and I am making arrangements that if the university says, don't come back tomorrow, I know I have told my students, here's what we're going to be doing if and when the university says we can't come to campus. So I have to be ready for my backup, if you will. and what depends on what the university's call is for us. So the contingency of faculty, I know the issue of some don't want to come to campus face to face. I'm not going there. That's not what this is intended to become. But the realization of face-to-face teaching, you be ready to switch it immediately to campus. And have that indicated in the syllabus that whenever the university is closing, like we did the last semester, if it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11, I can decide if I'm going to be synchronously meeting through Zoom with my Monday, Wednesday, Friday class at 11. I can't just say, oh, I'd rather have an 8 o'clock because that's not when my class meets.
Jamie, I'd just like to say one thing along these lines. I brought this up before, but what we're essentially asking faculty is to plan 2 courses, to plan a face-to-face version of their class and an online version of their class. And I know as somebody who was teaching online before this happened, planning online courses is really labor intensive. And I'd just like to acknowledge that we're asking people to double a workload, basically planning for 8 classes instead of 4 in the fall. And I think that we need to be mindful of what that does to the faculty workload, particularly like adjunct faculty who are getting paid very little per class and may not have, you know, a lot of free time. Also considering that faculty members might become ill or be caring for ill loved ones. A lot of us have children who aren't able to go to summer camps or daycares or school in the fall. We don't even know. And so adding workload on top of already strained circumstances seems particularly problematic. And I just wanted to kind of bring that component in.
Can I say something, speaking both to what Stephanie just said? Again, not a senator, but I was chair of that subcommittee on academic instruction continuity. And we had 2 recommendations here. One was that if you are teaching a face-to-face class, that you state in your syllabus what your plan will be in the event of a shutdown, right? So that that's in the syllabus, so that if that happens, which is highly likely, as we know, or could happen, there is less communication difficulty between faculty and students, some of which we saw in the spring when this happened with no warning, right? So that's one thing. The other piece, though, the other recommendation we put in is, yes, we know this is asking faculty to do a lot more work. I don't know that there's any way around it, to be honest, unless you start off as online. And that conversation is happening right now, right, in terms of how the schedule's being built. So we did put a recommendation in that this is very clearly understood and represented in annual evaluations this year. For faculty, for tenure track faculty that are judged on research, we clearly spelled out that this is a piece that needs to be taken into account whenever faculty members evaluated over the course of the year. And I want to say this was one of the first things that the chancellor pointed out when we brought forward our recommendations to the larger task force. So I think there's full awareness of what is being asked, and it's not pretty. I also don't think there's probably any way around this. If you are choosing to teach a face-to-face class, right? If you're not, or if you have already, put in for an online course, that's another scenario. But I just wanted to clarify that, and absolutely to support what Stephanie said. I get it.
Yeah, thanks. And I was actually going to bring that up as well. The idea that considering other areas where workload is a possibility, research, service, things like that, just, that we need to, that we need to consider how those impact if some people are going to be just trying to keep their heads above water, just teaching their classes this year. So I just think that we need to keep all of those in mind. I'm particularly worried, like I said, just as, the non-tenure track committee chair, I always think about the non-tenure track faculty, and I'm just particularly worried about adjuncts who might be asked to teach face-to-face classes, especially if a lot of full-time faculty aren't wanting to teach face-to-face, and if they want to go online, and adjuncts are given, hey, we've got these classes. Asking them to plan 2 classes is a lot, especially for the little pay that they get.
Definitely, if it helps any, the direction I've gone personally is gone through my syllabus and what I've expected with face-to-face. Those assignments are on Canvas. I just put them on Canvas already. So that way, through my class, when we meet, we discuss what they've previously, it's like the flipped classroom. They've submitted their work already in Canvas. And I've had to make some modifications with my classes, but matching what I expect face-to-face and just go ahead and put the assignments in Canvas. Nothing added, nothing taken away. And then to explain this class we've met on campus Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11, expect meeting me on Zoom at this number on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 11.
I want to say that I think what Stephanie is saying, and I want to echo this, is that we're running into an issue where the face-to-face classes are largely gen ed classes. The gen ed classes are largely taught by adjuncts. And so the excess labor is very specifically falling on the people who are both least protected and least well compensated. And I feel like if we don't address that as a deliberative body, we're really abandoning a pretty significant chunk of our faculty, and that we should be discussing it and thinking of ways to address it.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by face-to-face versus online. Given the reduction in capacity of our classrooms, I think a lot of us are teaching classes that will be reduced to about 25% of the enrollment. So we are going to be having face-to-face with, let's say a class of 50, and I have 18 student in the class to satisfy the capacity of the room. Does that mean the other students are having a distance experience, an online experience? So are we doing online anyway with our face-to-face?
Here, when it's talking about the face-to-face for contingency plans for face-to-face, this is having a contingency plan in your syllabus if you are teaching a class that has any face-to-face meetings. So, whether you're doing high flex or hybrid, or, there's many variations of having at least a little bit of face-to-face contact. But if you are teaching a class in the fall that has any face-to-face contact planned, that you have a statement in your syllabus that says this is what's going to happen. If the university moves to 100% remote learning, similar to we did in the spring, this is what will happen. We will maintain our time slot and meet synchronously using Kaltura or Zoom or, whatever the plan is, but having a plan if you have a class that has even a teeny bit of face-to-face contact.
It's not that we're telling anybody what to do or how to do it. Again, I've got a class, I'm meeting 8 on Tuesday, 8 on Thursday because of the room capacity. But I still need to let them know when the university says leave, don't come back, we are still in business and going fully online. And I have to tell my kids, this is how we're doing it. Now, the issue with Stephanie and Sarah,
I'll say in reply to Stephanie and Sarah, for me, workload is a major issue to be attempted to be tackled in the coming year. It's an issue that has been punted down the street year after year after year after year after year. There's still no workload policy, and workloads vary greatly across the campus. So workload is an issue on my agenda, and definitely the impact of COVID will be part of that discussion. And we will be considering all types of instructors, including adjuncts, because they are being asked to carry an extra burden under the COVID situation.
Yeah, I just know in the past, designing online courses has been something that there was additional pay for when you took your class and designed an online version of it. And I understand the problem with trying to pay every faculty member on campus who's all of a sudden having to design an online class, but that is what we're asking people to do. And so, I just think we would be remiss if we didn't have that discussion. And again, particularly for people like the non-tenure track faculty, both lecturers and adjuncts who teach the vast majority of our gen ed classes, but who, as Sarah pointed out, are generally the lowest paid and have the least protection. And it seems like a lot of extra work being asked.
Any other comments on new business C, the online contingency plan?
Jamie, I have a question for the online contingency of if students sign up for face-to-face, which is, obviously well within the right where that's what we're doing. The idea then that we would, if campus shuts down, that we now switch immediately to online and then tell them we're hosting synchronous classes. Are we going to run into, and I anticipate running into the same problems that we did this spring, where if students go home, some of them don't have internet access. Some of them, one of mine said she's been working from the parking lot of McDonald's between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. because they had one computer, one car, and 6 people. So how, I guess in the syllabus, like how do we address that? Because I can understand that that's going to cause anxiety of a student who now is expected to be online at a certain time, and that's just not feasible.
Right. And Alex, very good point and a grave concern. Teresa Litka with the library, Walker Center for Teaching and Learning. If Linda's still on if Teresa's still on the call, or Dawn, you folks jump in, because it has been ongoing since the spring for students needing hotspots, laptops. Somebody help me here.
So I'll say also, I'll just make a point that putting your contingency plan in the syllabus, you get to decide what your contingency plan is. So for me, my contingency plan in this past spring for my law class was to take a face-to-face synchronous class and move it online asynchronously, because I knew students were having trouble connecting at certain times of day. So I chose to go asynchronous, and I built my class that way. So faculty have a choice there about, are you going to maintain a synchronous class during the time periods that you've been assigned or not? And that's part of what you're trying to spell out in your contingency plan. I will say, the Chancellor mentioned this yesterday, or Richard Brown at the Chancellor's Q&A mentioned yesterday, the university, under the current proposed budget from the state of Tennessee, will be, fingers crossed that the budget is fully approved, receiving $500,000 to buy additional technology for students, to buy things like laptops and Wi-Fi and et cetera, so that if we were to move 100% online, we would be able to provide even more students with the resources and get the word out that, okay, if you are in a situation where you do not have internet access or do not have a laptop, that those could be provided to you if we were to return to 100% remote.
Teresa is off the call, but since I work in IT and over in the library, yes, the plan is to continue providing technology to students and employees of the university throughout the fall, regardless of whether or not we are all online or not. Because we did shift the loan rules going into the end of the spring semester so that students could keep the equipment longer than possible, under the assumption we are still some sort of hybrid situation in the fall. We may adjust loan rules so it gives them, there are enough machines available for students to pick up for a couple hours or a couple days, and then if students need it for longer periods of time, we'll have loan rules that account for those as well. So that if we know going into the semester, student just won't have access and may need a laptop for the duration, hopefully we'll have enough. We found from the spring going into the summer that even though we have substantially fewer machines than the total population of the university, enough people have their own devices that we did not encounter running out of all the computers, hotspots. The webcams tended to be the one thing our university didn't have sufficient amounts of, but we had enough laptops and Chromebooks with integrated webcams that ended up not being an issue.
The only issue we occasionally ran ran into is if students had lived in a very rural location that they couldn't get Wi-Fi or hotspot access. But that was pretty rare. I'd say in all the requests we received, we maybe only had maybe 2 or 3. They were in such a remote location, they just didn't have cell phone access that would allow the hotspot to work. Otherwise, we processed those requests. Brian and I were actually talking about one during the Faculty Senate meeting. So students are still requesting as they come in. So happy to help however we can.
Yeah, and I answered, but Steve Ray's question, yes, we can provide some language for syllabi. We have the websites up where people request both on the employee and student side. And the group that had gotten together in mid-March to sort of come up with this process, we'll be meeting a few more times over the course of the summer and leading into fall to make sure we adjust or tweak the process as needed, depending on how the semester unfolds. And we will also, as we did with the spring and summer semesters, email out the campus as well so that we get enough communication out to everyone in as many different ways as possible.
Thank you, Brian. Last on the new business is attendance policy tracking. Chris, Dr. Smith alluded to it a little bit with her presentation of how to best assign seats. If you know your students in your major, if it's a majors class, you could take a picture. That's just an option, but somehow to best manage classroom control of location. And again, we're talking this semester, possibly spring, but that's middle school assigning seats. But at this moment in time, it may be helpful to have a seating chart, and creatures of habit, maybe they would be doing that anyway. And with the guidelines for classroom hygiene and behaviors, along with attendance tracking. On to 5, faculty concerns. I don't want to hold my breath too much longer on that one. You've really done great with the concerns with what we've discussed today, though. All right. Announcements. I have one. Dr. Hinsdale Bernard is moving away from us through his retirement and going west to Phoenix, Arizona. Is Dr. Bernard still on the call? There he is. So props to Dr. Bernard, yes, and best wishes to him. Dr. Bernard, you got anything to say like you did this morning in the meeting? You're on mute. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I have to do it quickly. I may soon lose my power. I'm in my car. I'm on the way to the airport. I sure appreciated working with all my colleagues in the Faculty Senate. And I would like to say how much I will miss working with you. But I will be in Arizona with grandkids, and hopefully I'll be just as busy or even busier. So I have to say hi and bye. And I guess this might be my last official meeting with the Faculty Senate. And I wish you all the best as you go forward for the new year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now he's in the car. That is awesome.
Yes.
The length you go to attend a Faculty Senate meeting. And the last
I'm in Nashville. I'm in Nashville picking up my wife at the airport. So I'm headed there right now. I'm 5 minutes away from picking her up. And she came to get me to take me back to to the children back there.
Yeah. Thank you, big time. Oh, that's great.
Jamie, this is Matt. May I use 30 seconds of your time for announcements? I would like for you guys, if you could, as your representatives from your various areas, to go back and tell folks that the support that they may need for a variety of things in the fall is going to be available. So that's things like the Walker Center, which is currently offering a lot of sessions on Canvas, including the forums, the studio for doing videos and quizzes. They have training on HighFlex course design, Kaltura, which is our new lecture capture software, and Zoom. Make sure you avail yourself of those things. And if you could, take that back to your colleagues in your departments and colleges. The Dean of Students is offering a training soon. I'd like to give them a plug for de-escalation techniques. I think that was mentioned earlier, something that you may need in the fall if you have a student or I guess, unfortunately, a colleague who is not willing to abide by the safety requirements. And don't forget that the Dean of Students does a roadshow. They will bring their work to you and talk to you about all of the services they offer. And I can say personally, that is an important service they offer. They talk about how to deal with students of concern, how to deal with disruptive students, which could be a serious problem in the fall. They talk about how they deal with absences and how they can help you, academic integrity and campus safety. If you haven't had them come to your department, ask your department head to do it. I think it's an important service they offer, and I just want to make sure everybody knows that's available probably even during the summer if you wanted to get your department together. I see Brett saying, yeah, that's an option. So I would just want to mention that you guys have time now maybe to get ready for fall. These things are still being offered. It's time to take advantage of them.
What department did you say, Matt, to contact?
Contact the Dean of Students office, contact Brett Fuchs. Brett, is that right? They email you? Brett's saying yeah.
That's right. And I'll email all the department heads and deans a reminder in a couple weeks. I try not to hit everybody too early. I know faculty, most are on 9-month contracts, so I try not to harass you too much during the summer, but we will offer sessions. We will come to you in July, August via Zoom, whatever works best. Same thing with the de-escalation training in partnership with Faculty Senate. So Charlene and I have been discussing that, and we'll have some more details in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Jamie, before we leave, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure who's going to be on this attendance policy. I had an email from Julia Kaminsky, and I guess, Brett, you've been voluntold, and I assume Charlene, and then
so what I'll do, so the vote was 17 in favor of an institutional and 6 in favor of department, so institutional won out. I will send an email out later tomorrow morning to the incoming Faculty Senate calling for volunteers to serve on this committee, and everybody, including Angel, you can decide if you want to volunteer or not. I'm not going to volunteer anybody, so if you want to quietly not volunteer again, that's okay. But I will put a call out to the new Senate. If we don't get enough representatives from the Senate to form a committee, then I will put it out to the larger faculty as well. I don't feel like it has to be limited to just faculty, but we'll Senate representatives, but we'll start there. Obviously, the committee will have to work very quickly. So a small committee that could work quickly would probably be best, not one with 30 or 40 people on it. And we'll have a called meeting on July 16th. That's the third Thursday of July to look at and edit and hopefully endorse institutional level syllabus policy.
Any other announcements? Call for adjournment.
Liz Hathaway.
Second.
It's just been 2 hours, so y'all been fabulous. Thank you for attending summer. Wow, you're in it. That's why you're a senator, because you care. So carry on the good work. We will with Charlene, and all of you stay at it, work together. Go Mocs. Bye. Thank you.